We're going to live together. You take the kids and get out. After giving birth, I was living at my parents' house. I went back to our house to pick up something I'd forgotten. When I opened the door to the bedroom with the closet, I found Ethan and a young woman snuggled up together.
Ethan, what are you doing?
It's obvious, isn't it?
So, you were cheating after all.
It's not cheating. I'm living here with Bella now. Bella, the woman next to Ethan, also laughed and added. Seeing them like this, I no longer had any desire to repair our relationship. Ethan's a high earner, unlike you. We're going to live a luxurious life on his earnings. Got it, though he only makes $1,000 a month. I was starting to forget the anger I felt towards Ethan for cheating during my pregnancy. I was too busy with childcare to dwell on it. But I'm not the kind of person to stay silent after being treated like this. The irony is that Ethan doesn't realize he was able to live because of me, and Bella believes Ethan is a high earner. This situation is full of things to point out. If they're that foolish, it makes things easier for me. I decided to thoroughly corner them, who are blind to reality. I am Madeline, 29 years old. I graduated from a fashion school and work in design. Ethan, 5 years younger than me, was still a student when we met. His part-time job was at a bar near my company, and we got acquainted because we often went there for company drinks. To me, Ethan was just another staff member. But he pursued me aggressively, leading to our relationship. At first, I was puzzled, wondering, why me? I'm 5 years older. But I was swayed by Ethan's words, age doesn't matter. You're attractive, Madeline, and decided to date him. Our relationship felt fresh. Ethan loves to have fun in large groups, probably influenced by his bar job. Ethan often threw parties and took me to various places. All of Ethan's friends were cheerful and sociable young people. I was worried about feeling out of place, but everyone welcomed me warmly. After dating for 2 years, Ethan became a working professional, and I turned 28, starting to think about marriage. However, since Ethan was still young, I shouldn't pressure him. I often hear that when women rush into marriage, it can cause the couple to break up. I was fretting over this when Ethan surprised me with a proposal. Of course, I was happy about the proposal, but I also had my doubts. It was my sister, Laura, who gave me the push I needed. Laura has always been smart and excels at her job. She's been a reliable person I could turn to for advice. You don't get chances like this often in life. Ethan is a bright and good guy. You should just go for it and get married. I couldn't imagine marrying anyone but Ethan. If I were to have children, I wanted it to be with him. You're earning well, so there's no need to worry about finances. Just be happy. With my sister's words, I married Ethan. But soon after our marriage, something unexpected happened. Ethan suddenly quit his job.
I'd rather own my own place than work for someone else. I'll be working part-time at the bar I used to work at for a while, but I need your support.
I was puzzled, but his resignation was already in process. I emphasized to Ethan that this was a temporary situation and decided to support our household for a while. Ethan was happy and seemed to be studying hard about opening his own place. I found his determination endearing and really wanted him to succeed. This marked the beginning of Ethan's part-time life, and almost a year had passed. I wouldn't know because I worked full-time, but Ethan apparently wasn't taking many shifts, focusing instead on studying for his business. He was saving all the money he earned for his startup fund and didn't contribute to our household expenses. However, my body began to show signs of change. When I went to the doctor, I was shocked to learn I was pregnant. I was in no condition to support us anymore. Ethan, I'm pregnant. The part-time life has to end. Can you start supporting our family now? I thought he would be happy about the pregnancy, but his reaction was completely different. Ethan threw the glass he was holding at me. It shattered with a loud noise, and the drink inside splashed everywhere.
What the heck? You said you'd support me, was that a lie?
It wasn't a lie, but things have changed now. Shouldn't we support each other in tough times as a couple?
Don't mess with me. You just want to relax and not work because you're pregnant, don't you?
Ethan labeled me as a lazy woman and wouldn't listen. He seemed completely ignorant about maternity or paternity leave. He looked off into the distance, imagining his future prospects.
I'm going to have my own place someday. I can't be bothered with such trivial matters.
After spitting out those words, Ethan left the house and went somewhere. He didn't return until after 5 a.m. He reeked of alcohol, and his clothes were dirty in places. It looked like he had gone out drinking and partying again.
You came back drunk? Can't you take our child's situation more seriously?
He didn't reply, and for the next 3 days, Ethan didn't speak to me at all. His behavior was like that of a sulking child, and I was exasperated. Ethan wouldn't eat at home and often left at night. I handled all the household chores, and one night after he went out, I noticed a woman's perfume scent on his clothes while doing laundry. It was always the same scent. I couldn't believe it but suspected infidelity. However, with my growing belly, I couldn't move freely. When I consulted my sister, she offered to look into it, and I gratefully accepted her help.
Hello, Madeline, is now a good time to talk?
Ethan's out, so it's fine. My sister seemed surprised.
He's out at this hour. Well, given the results of the investigation, it's not surprising. What about Ethan?
It seemed she had tracked Ethan's activities on a particular day. Fortunately, he had been in busy areas, making it easy to follow him. According to her, Ethan had gone out at night, drinking and partying. Then, he separated from his friends and met a young woman, eventually entering a hotel with her. The place where Ethan was fooling around was near the bar where he worked part-time, a familiar area to me. I was infuriated that he was doing whatever he pleased. It was the worst-case scenario I had feared. I was stunned and speechless for a while. However, the photos my sister sent were undeniable proof of Ethan's infidelity. The next morning, when Ethan returned home looking disheveled, I confronted him about it. He still had the same perfume scent on him.
Ethan, you're cheating, aren't you?
Cheating? I'm not cheating. Ethan's eyes were evasive, his body fidgety.
Stop lying. I'm not accusing you without evidence. Don't mess with me. If you keep talking nonsense, I'll hit you.
Ethan grabbed his bag and left the house in his tired state. He might be going to his lover's place. When I went into labor a few days later, Ethan still hadn't returned home. I had no choice but to get ready alone and took a taxi to the hospital with my hospital bag. From then on, I had no time to think about Ethan. The baby was born safely, and I found myself lying in the hospital bed. I was grateful that my parents, who lived nearby, took turns staying with me. After giving birth, I was too busy with nursing and other things. During this hectic time, Ethan called.
The baby's born? Both mother and child are healthy. That's not what I'm concerned about. You'll be staying at your parents' place for a while, right? How long? How long?
Maybe 2 months.
Why?
I was puzzled, but Ethan said, "It's none of your business," and hung up abruptly. I stayed at my parents' house after giving birth. Ethan never came to see us. About a month after giving birth, as winter approached, I went back to our house to get a coat I had left in the closet. But when I opened the front door, I was struck by a strange sensation. The entire room smelled of that familiar perfume. It was unmistakably the same scent I had smelled on Ethan's clothes. The room was eerily quiet. I opened the bedroom door where the closet was. There, I found Ethan and a woman, closely entwined. The woman was young, almost looking like a student.
Ethan, what are you doing?
You can see what I'm doing.
So you were cheating after all.
It's not cheating. I'm living here with Bella now. The woman beside Ethan giggled and added her comments. That's right, we're living together now. You should take the child and leave. Seeing this, I no longer had any desire to mend our relationship.
Ethan is a high earner, unlike you. We're going to live a luxurious life with his earnings. Understood, even though he barely earns anything.
Bella seemed completely unaware of Ethan's actual income. However, she began to dreamily talk about their future life together, and it was clear we were not on the same page. Anyway, it seemed I was an unwanted presence for them. If that's what they wanted, so be it. I quickly grabbed my coat and was about to leave. Wait, take this with you. It's perfect timing. He handed me a divorce form. Filled out in every section except mine. I made a quick decision.
I'll fill it out right here.
I completed the divorce form on the spot and handed it back to Ethan. Here you go.
Please send the rest of my belongings by courier later.
Sure. Saves me the trouble. Bye. Don't come back. As I closed the bedroom door, I could hear their laughter from behind. I went back to my parents' house and told my sister about the divorce. When I mentioned Ethan being cozy with another woman in the bedroom, she seemed astounded.
I actually found out something about Ethan's cheating.
What is it? My sister recalled that during Ethan's drinking spree at the bar, he had mentioned a certain app. A matchmaking app that seemed a bit shady. I registered on it. Are you sure that's safe, sis? I'm single, and there's no harm in just registering. Plus, it's free for women. My sister did some research on the app and found out that Ethan was registered there. She showed me his profile on her smartphone. Ethan's profile picture was a design I had created for work. Curiously, he had listed his profession as a designer, seemingly using my career to appeal to women. He also greatly exaggerated his income.
His profile is full of lies. Just listing things that would make women happy, probably looking for affairs.
He was such a shallow man. I regretted not realizing this before our marriage. Just then, my phone buzzed. There was a message from Ethan.
I've already submitted the divorce papers. We're strangers now. I also filed the marriage registration with Bella. You're useless to me now.
Following the message, a selfie taken at the office, featuring Ethan and the woman, was sent. My sister frowned upon seeing it.
What a terrible man. Madeline, you did the right thing by leaving him. Yeah, I think so.
My heart ached thinking of my child, but following my sister's advice, I decided to quickly sort out my personal affairs. A month later, as I was preoccupied with childcare and had nearly forgotten about Ethan, a flood of calls came from him. Picking up, I heard his panicked voice.
Hey! Weren't the rent and heating bills being deducted from your account? I've just been notified that this month's payment hasn't been deposited. You're supposed to be managing your own life now. I've changed the direct debit details for you. What have you done? All the payments are failing, and I'm getting collection notices one after the other.
Indeed, Ethan's income wouldn't support the lifestyle we had before. But his financial troubles were no longer my concern. As we were now strangers, I responded calmly. However, Ethan still seemed to be counting on my earnings, even after our separation. He had no intention of giving up the nice condo we had rented with my income.
Being stingy with money. You're trying to ruin me. I'm bringing Bella over to your place, so have the money ready.
After the call, I asked my mother not to serve tea or anything when our guests arrived. Meanwhile, my phone kept ringing incessantly. It must be Ethan, how persistent. Checking my phone, I saw messages pouring in from mutual friends of Ethan and me.
Madeline, what's this about cheating and running away with the house money?
Don't be petty, just apologize to Ethan quickly.
I trusted you, but to think you were that kind of person, that's just low.
Apparently, Ethan had been spreading misinformation to our friends to suit his narrative. It was inexcusable, even in anger. I showed the messages to my sister, contemplating a response, when the doorbell rang. Ethan and Bella had arrived at my parents' house. Reluctantly, I led them to the living room, where Ethan sat down arrogantly, with Bella leaning against him. My sister and I braced ourselves for the discussion ahead. My sister and I faced Ethan and Bella, ready to have a serious discussion. So, how are you going to make this right? Quite bold of you, considering your measly earnings.
Don't say that here.
Bella's face changed color slightly. Ethan, what does she mean? I remained silent and showed the prepared pay slips of Ethan. I had been keeping these slips monthly for tax calculation purposes.
Is this really your monthly income? This is less than a part-timer's.
Ethan barely took any shifts.
He claimed he was studying to start his own business, but all I saw was him playing around. He would go out drinking at night and sleep till noon.
Ethan started making excuses.
This was just a bad month. I'm going to own my place soon and you'll see. But with this, you can't even pay this month's rent. Weren't you a high-earning designer?
My sister showed Bella Ethan's profile on the app.
Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, we met on this app.
All of this profile is a lie. What? What do you mean?
Bella looked shocked.
But the design sketches. Those are my work.
I showed Bella my sketchbook.
I recognize these. And these too. Designer Madeline, that's you.
Yes.
Ethan was pretending to be me to impress women.
You've been deceived.
That's despicable. Lying about your career. Don't make up things. You're just trying to manipulate Bella.
Ethan was the one who had been manipulating her all along. It was astonishing how he continued with lies that were bound to be uncovered. Apparently, he had even pretended the condo was his. Bella believed him and moved in.
Being married to Ethan is a blot in my life.
Bella, you're married to him now.
Good luck with this loser.
Bella, her face turning red with anger, slapped Ethan repeatedly. Ethan tried to fend off her slaps while desperately continuing his defense.
She's too naive, believes anything. Madeline, if you keep this up, I'll sue you for defamation. Naive? Really? I've done some investigating. Near the place you two met, there's a nightclub. I went there again recently. And guess what? I saw you, Bella, entering the club. What? You must be mistaken. When you filed your marriage registration, you sent a photo. You were wearing the same coat. I couldn't mistake such a flashy girl.
But Ethan couldn't seem to give up. Bella's profile apparently stated she worked in an apparel store.
The flashy style is because she works in apparel. Stop being jealous, you old woman. Old woman, huh? Well, the club Bella's been entering isn't exactly reputable. They trick customers into paying for expensive extras.
My sister showed the information site of the club, which unmistakably had Bella's photo.
That's a lie. Sure, Bella's often not home at night, but she said it's because work runs late. Why don't you think back on what you've been doing to Bella, Ethan? You've been lying as effortlessly as breathing, right? Now that I think of it, she does have a lot of luxury brands that you couldn't afford on your regular earnings.
Suddenly, Bella shouted.
It's all out now! Yes, I'm the #1 girl at that club, and I'm known as Princess. I've got lots of men showering me with gifts.
I couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. Ethan and Bella, both so deluded.
Bella, was everything you told me a lie? Likewise. If I knew you weren't a designer, I wouldn't have dated you. Liar. A little embellishment on my resume is nothing compared to what you've done. What you've done is a betrayal to men.
Ethan, even now, wanted to claim he was not at fault. Suddenly, Ethan started hitting Bella. Their ridiculous exchange was unbearable, and I finally spoke up.
Both of you are the same, a pair of liars. Just get along with each other. In the end, I was the only one not lying.
Ethan looked at me with tearful eyes.
Madeline, I was wrong. Can't we start over?
You're married now, Ethan.
That's an impossible request.
But Ethan was persistent.
I'll divorce her. You and I were always meant to be together. Such a convenient story. I won't divorce until I find my next target. I'm staying put. I'm divorcing you. I want a peaceful life with Madeline.
Indifferently fiddling with my phone, I replied.
Who was it that destroyed that peaceful life, I wonder?
Ethan and Bella continued their unseemly argument. Ethan wanted a divorce, while Bella wanted to continue their current arrangement. After a while, as I set my phone on the table, Ethan's phone started ringing incessantly. He checked the messages and turned pale.
What's this? All my friends are cutting ties with me?
I had recorded the conversation and sent it to our mutual friends. Hearing the recording, they learned of Ethan's actions and unanimously turned against him.
You're involving friends and lying, that's cowardly. Should I sue you for defamation?
Ethan bit his lip and fell silent.
Madeline, you did the right thing divorcing such a man.
What should we do now? My sister seemed almost amused.
I'll certainly be claiming alimony and child support. Wait, I don't have that kind of money.
That's fine.
I've considered involving a lawyer.
At the mention of a lawyer, Ethan looked like he wanted to run. With solid evidence of infidelity, he likely knew he had no chance of winning. I handed Ethan a note with the bank details for the transfer.
All you want is money. What a vile woman. I want alimony too. Falling for such a man was a complete loss. How much more are you going to mess up my life?
Ethan, grabbing his bag's handle, started swinging it around. A vase on the table fell over, leaving the living room in a mess. My sister quickly took out her phone and made a call.
Hello, police?
I'm being threatened by a man. I'll give you the address. Hearing police, Ethan and Bella turned pale, quickly gathering their things and heading towards the door.
I won't forgive you for this. Don't think this is over.
What a case of sour grapes. Everything was his own doing.
Don't ever show your faces here again, you despicable couple.
I closed the door before Ethan and Bella could turn their backs.
Wasn't calling the police a bit much, sis?
My sister showed me her black phone screen, sticking her tongue out.
Was it all an act?
To silence those fools, this was enough. We high-fived, sharing a moment of triumph. After they left, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends were sending messages apologizing for their doubts. At least, the misunderstanding was cleared. They all decided to cut ties with Ethan. Ethan, having always been careless with money and frequently involved in petty borrowing and lending, had finally pushed his limits too far. His recent misconduct, coupled with his long-standing financial irresponsibility, seemed to be the last straw for many. Now, Ethan wouldn't be able to enjoy outings with friends anymore. As for me, my divorce was already finalized. I decided to proceed with claiming alimony, as it can be requested even after the divorce. Ethan was working hard at his part-time jobs. One day, I received a call from Ethan. Madeline, help me. Bella won't leave. She has nowhere else to go. No matter how much I beg, she just won't budge. So, you two didn't get a divorce. I want to divorce, but Bella seems to have no other place to go. She refuses to move no matter what. The irony was not lost on me. Ethan, who wouldn't work and left so quickly, was now facing the opposite situation. Weren't you two in love and got married? Try to make it work. I can't stand being with such a liar anymore. Bella is openly using dating apps right in front of me. She dresses up and goes out at night, and she doesn't contribute to the household financially. I couldn't help but suppress a laugh. Bella's actions were unexpected, but it seemed she was giving Ethan a hard time. Poor you. But I endured similar treatment from you, even through my pregnancy. Why don't you try a bit harder? Come on. Bella takes all the money I save. Please help me. Ethan's voice was whiny. I felt nothing but a visceral disgust for him. I firmly refused his plea for help and hung up. According to a mutual friend, Ethan was later fired from the bar. He couldn't resist flirting with a regular customer. The manager was furious, reminding Ethan of all the nurturing he had done, and threw him out without a word. With almost no employment history, Ethan struggled to find another job and eventually resorted to debt. Unable to borrow from reputable lenders, he fell into a cycle of borrowing from shady sources to pay off other debts. Meanwhile, Bella continued living in Ethan's house, going out to nightclubs and meeting men. Bella had nowhere to live originally and targeted Ethan, seemingly well off, leading to their marriage. She seems to rely on men for her lifestyle. She is now desperately looking for a man with better prospects. Despite Ethan's pleas, Bella refuses to leave, resulting in endless arguments. I mercilessly demanded from Ethan $60,000 in alimony for his infidelity, along with child support. So far, he has been making the payments on time. My sister's bluff and threats seem to have worked effectively. Ethan occasionally calls asking for help, but I ignore him completely. His troubles seem minor compared to the pain I endured. With the support of my parents and sister, I'm comfortably raising my child. My single sister adores the baby, who is growing up healthy and happy. The child was growing up healthily and happily. I cherish the ordinary moments of parenting, singing with my child, playing in the bath. These are precious and enjoyable times. Starting next month, I plan to place the child in daycare during the day and return to work on a reduced hours basis. I love my work and am excited to return. My company is very understanding and accommodating of my situation as a single mother. I look forward to cherishing the things I love while embarking on a new journey in life. My name is Angela Stevens. I'm a 37-year-old housewife. I met my husband, Tom, through our parents and eventually got married. We were just an ordinary couple, or so it seemed, but lately, Tom's been acting strange. Man, the meals Angela makes are really delicious. I'm so lucky to eat such great food every day. Angela, thanks for always keeping our home in order. It gives me peace of mind and helps me focus at work. It's my day off today, so I'll take care of everything at home. Leave it to me. Angela, just relax. This has been his constant behavior lately. To an outsider, he might seem like the ideal husband, always appreciative and helpful with chores. However, this behavior started abruptly just after we celebrated our 12th wedding anniversary. His over-the-top flattery and obvious behavior struck me as odd. I had a hunch about why Tom was acting this way. Angela. My in-laws called out to me worriedly as I left the living room, ignoring Tom singing badly while doing the dishes in the kitchen. I nodded firmly at them. I can do anything to protect my family. The plan was already in motion. All that was left was to wait for Tom to make a decisive move, and soon enough, that day came. So, Angela, you're cheating on me, aren't you? Excuse me? Tom, out of the blue, accused me of cheating to justify a divorce. Here, the divorce papers, he said, thrusting them at me with a triumphant smile. I silently signed the papers, a sure smile on my face hidden from Tom. After completing the papers, I confronted him about his secret. Suddenly, he brazenly admitted, I have a child with my mistress. After we divorce, I'll live with them in my house. Despite his infidelity, he had the audacity to say this. I decided to enlighten him with the truth. Which house are you talking about? You didn't hear, did you? Huh? Tom was dumbfounded. Just seeing his foolish face made all the pent-up frustration and anger from our marriage feel lighter. Yes, it had been a long journey to this point. I married Tom when I was 25, and I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. Although no romantic feelings developed between Tom and me, a familial bond formed over time, and I naturally wanted to protect this family. Perhaps because I had lost my parents by then. They passed away from illness shortly after seeing me in my wedding dress. They left me an inheritance that meant I'd never struggle financially, but money couldn't heal the pain of losing them. The ones who comforted me the most weren't Tom but my in-laws. We think of you as our own daughter, Angela. If you ever need anything, just ask. At that time, Tom had just finished the formalities at a funeral and said, I had plans with a colleague today. I'm good to go, right? And left promptly. His parents were outraged by such behavior, but they had known about his selfishness since his newlywed days, so I wasn't too surprised or disappointed. Gradually, I started getting closer to my in-laws, initially hesitant, but then more naturally. We would go out together, visit their home often, even stay over sometimes. This didn't sit well with Tom. Angela seems happier with my parents than with me. He would sulk like a child, saying such a thing. He would lock himself in his room until I apologized. To be honest, it was pretty troublesome. Tom seemed annoyed that I, at times, prioritized his parents over him. I never felt like I was favoring one over the other, but eventually, Tom must have said something because the invitations for my in-laws decreased.
We don't want to intrude on your precious time as a couple,
my mother-in-law would say sadly. But Tom often left me alone to go out. Because he's a man of many hobbies. I found it more worthwhile to study for a qualification than spend time with him. So, in a way, our marriage was smoothly drifting apart. Then one day, my father-in-law called to say my mother-in-law had been in a traffic accident. She was okay, but needed some assistance in daily life.
Hey, Dad's getting on in years, and it must be tough for him to help Mom by himself, right? How about we move in together?
Tom suggested we move in with them. And I agreed, concerned about their well-being. Living together brought us even closer, both physically and emotionally. I took care of her during the day, and my father-in-law, still working, would take over at night. Neighbors joked we were like a real family. This also highlighted Tom's absence in caregiving. Despite suggesting the move, he never helped. He avoided even the slightest tasks. Whenever I asked, he'd dodge, claiming Mom would prefer it if you did it. Then, one day, Tom's attitude changed dramatically. It was the start of what I call the flattery festival. I listened to his praises with a detached heart. Before long, that day arrived. That night, he stopped me. Can we talk? We sat facing each other on the sofa.
What's up?
I asked. After some feigned hesitation, he blurted out. Look, Angela, are you cheating on me?
Excuse me?
I was taken aback by this unexpected accusation. Unperturbed, he rapidly continued.
That reaction. So, it is true, huh? How could you cheat? Why would you do that? If you had any problems with me, you could have just said so.
Tom said, holding his head, putting on an act as a husband betrayed by his wife. What is this? I was astounded. Tom's scheme was all too obvious. His recent, blatantly obvious flattery was just a ploy to make himself appear as a grateful husband now turned into a victim of infidelity. But if he thought such a transparent and sloppy act would cover up his own actions, he's seriously mistaken. I just looked down at him, silent. This unexpected turn didn't really affect my plan. So, what to do now? Tom's poor acting continued.
But maybe I did something wrong too. I apologize for that. Staying with me, Angela probably won't be happy. Thinking of your happiness, I've made this decision.
He said this in a self-righteous tone and pulled out a divorce paper. Here, this is the divorce paper. His smug grin was barely concealed. If it's an act, at least do it properly. I looked at Tom with half-closed eyes. He was presenting the divorce paper under the pretense of considering my feelings. Maybe for Tom, this was quite a well-thought-out strategy. Or perhaps, it wasn't his idea. Someone else's suggestion? Still, the performance was too wooden and pitiable. All right. I said, without arguing or making excuses, and started signing the divorce paper. Tom looked bewildered. The mask had fallen off. Or should I say, his true colors. Regardless of whether I had cheated or not, Tom was probably planning to insist on my infidelity and push for divorce. Thinking back, I had never openly defied Tom since our marriage. Did he see me as a weak-willed and easily swayed person? Such a shallow thought. After completing the paper, I said, I'll take care of this. Then, I looked straight at Tom. He froze under my gaze. I began, by the way. Why did you think I was cheating?
What?
Tom looked puzzled for a moment, then reverted to a more assertive tone.
That's because I saw you secretly meeting an unknown man the other day.
The other day? When exactly?
The other day means the other day. About a week ago.
What time are you talking about? Approximately 1 week ago.
The other day means just that, the other day. Let's see, it was around 3 a.m., I think. Yeah, you entered a cafe near the station, right? I saw it with my own eyes.
Hearing Tom's words, I was sure there was no lie in his statement. Indeed, one afternoon a week ago, I did meet someone. Tom must have seen this and conveniently used it as a pretext for divorce.
You don't usually have field work for your job, do you? Were you out of the office during work hours that day? Well, that day, I just happened to be outside. Oh, really? I thought maybe you were skipping work to meet your mistress. Considering your work schedule at the office, any lie would be easily exposed. You should have thought that setting through. What did you say?
I could clearly see which of my words unsettled Tom. I let out a light laugh.
Didn't you hear? I said you might have been cheating, meeting your mistress instead of working. You're having an affair, aren't you?
My accusation made Tom's eyes widen. Then he retorted as if he had just realized something.
What are you talking about? You're the one cheating, aren't you? I saw it clearly with my own eyes. You were going into a cafe with another man. Is that all you have to conclude I'm cheating? That person was just an acquaintance. I'm not having an affair. Shut up. Even though you have a husband, meeting with an unknown man alone, that's already cheating.
What? I let out an incredulous what, in response to Tom's claim. It made no sense. What era or world was he talking about?
Besides, you signed the divorce papers. That means you admitted to cheating, right?
That's not true.
How can I admit to something I never did? I signed the divorce papers simply because I wanted to divorce you too. Huh?
Tom was taken aback by my unexpected rebuttal, his eyes wide open in shock. The look on his face said he never dreamed that I, his wife, would want to divorce him. I stood up, left the living room for a moment. I went to my room and took documents from the chest next to my bed, then returned to the living room.
This is irrefutable evidence of your affair.
I turned the envelope upside down, spilling its contents onto the coffee table. They were photos. Photos of Tom with a flashy dressed woman and a little boy who resembled him. To anyone unaware, they might seem like happy family photos. But there was more. Among the photos were pictures of Tom and the woman, arm in arm, entering a certain hotel.
What?
Tom's lips quivered at the sight of the numerous photos.
Never thought you'd not only have an affair but also a child.
With a sigh, I compared Tom to the photos. It was not me, but my father-in-law, who first noticed Tom's affair.
Angela, can we talk for a sec? It seems like Tom might be having an affair.
He said to me, sounding apologetic, making me feel sorry too. After hiring a detective agency, Tom's infidelity was confirmed. And it was more than just an affair, he had a child with his mistress. Realizing that this affair wasn't something recent, I was astonished. My in-laws, aware of this fact, condemned Tom's disloyalty and showed concern for me.
Angela, you should divorce such a man. As much as he's my son, I'm ashamed. That's right. You don't have to endure this, Angela. If you divorce, we'll handle the aftermath.
I nodded gratefully to their kind offer.
Thank you. I, too, have been thinking about divorcing Tom. But I can't just leave it to you two. Could we possibly fight this together?
So, my in-laws and I began a plan to teach Tom a lesson. I coldly addressed Tom, who was stunned by the scattered photos.
So, you're planning to marry your mistress and move in here with your new family of 3 as soon as we're divorced, right? I heard your loud conversation at the cafe, recorded by the detective.
He's really careless. I pulled out a voice recorder and played the conversation recorded at the cafe.
Hey, Tom, when can we get married?
Sally.
I'm trying my best, but it's tough. It'd be easier if she cheated. Really? Hey, maybe we should set her up with a guy? I know just the right one. Come on, that's the last resort. Really? Anyway, I'm tired of that cramped apartment. Our son is so energetic, it's hard to handle. Did you leave him at your parents' today? Yeah. Mom was nagging me, telling me to stop wandering around and leaving the kid. I wish my parents would just die first. Everything would be smoother.
It's so frustrating. Hearing this unbearable conversation, Tom looked up and exclaimed, "Fine.
I've been having an affair. Are you happy now?
You admit it quite easily.
The divorce is decided.
It's pointless to hide it anymore.
I'm going to marry my precious girlfriend and become a real family. The child is indeed mine, and we've planned to live together in my house after the divorce."
And what about your parents?
"I'll send them to a facility or something. They have enough money for their old age."
Too bad for you, huh?
What? You must have been cozying up to them for the inheritance, right? Sorry, but their savings will go to the facility, and this house will be mine. What a waste of 10 years caring for them. As a housewife, you'll struggle without me.
Tom sneered with an ugly expression. If this is his true nature, then hiding this hideous side was his only commendable act. But that won't change the fact of our divorce. I decided to bring Tom back to reality.
By the way, Tom.
What?
You keep saying you'll live in my house. Which house are you talking about?
Huh? At my question, Tom seemed confused about what I meant.
What are you talking about? My house is my house. I'm talking about this family home. But this house belongs to your father and mother, right? That's what I mean. Once we put them in a facility, it becomes mine as inheritance. I'm their son, so I have the right, right?
Tom answered irritably. I couldn't help but smile slightly.
Really? You haven't heard anything at all.
What? What's going on?
This house is going to be demolished soon.
What? Tom was utterly baffled by my words. His expression was amusing.
This house will soon be torn down and turned into an empty lot. So, the house you were planning to live in with your mistress and child doesn't exist.
What? I didn't know about this. Tom's voice echoed in shock. And to his "I didn't know," someone replied.
That's not true, I told you clearly.
What? Dad? Appearing in the living room were my father-in-law and mother-in-law in their nightclothes. Both of them looked at Tom with utter disdain. Their gaze was so cold, it was hard to believe it was directed towards their own flesh and blood.
Hey, Dad! What's this about demolishing the house? What's to say? This foolish son of ours.
Tom flinched at his father's angry shout. I, too, was startled by my father-in-law's loud voice, a first for me. My usually stooped, frail-looking in-laws stood tall, staring down at my husband. They looked grand and dependable.
A man who cheats on his wife like you. Aren't you ashamed as a man, no, as a human being? But, I mean, not just that. You never help Angela or us, always loafing around or escaping on your days off. As for the house, I told you clearly. It's going to be gone soon, so you should start looking for a new place. But you were too busy with your mistress on your phone, just nodding along. That doesn't count as telling me. And why suddenly demolish the house? There's no need, right? If the house is gone, what will happen to you guys? To hear such concern from the one who planned to kick us out.
My father-in-law snorted, and Tom groaned in frustration. Then, he glared at me.
You must have put them up to this, right? Dragging my parents into our marital issues, how low can you go? The one who's low is you!
Exclaimed my mother-in-law, standing with support from my father-in-law. I hurriedly took her hand and seated her beside me.
This house was getting old, and we had been planning to demolish it and sell the land soon. Angela has been helping us with this for a long time. Why are you consulting Angela? She's just a stay-at-home wife, right? Angela is not just any housewife.
At this, my father-in-law gave me a nod, signaling it was okay to reveal the truth.
You might not know this, but Angela inherited her late parents' estate, which includes managing several properties. She's been studying to handle this estate efficiently and even has several professional qualifications. As part of that, she's been advising us too. What?
Tom's face showed shock for what seemed like the umpteenth time today. He turned to look at me with a creaky, rusted machinery-like movement. Sighing, I confirmed, what he said is true. The inheritance from my parents wasn't just money, it included several apartments and buildings. My parents were into real estate investments, and they always told me to study it since I would inherit it someday. So, while I am a housewife, I have rental income from these properties. Probably several times more than Tom's salary. Tom's mouth moved soundlessly, still in shock. Seeing his reaction, I was glad I hadn't told him about the inheritance. I had considered telling him at my parents' funeral, but lost all inclination when he hurried off to have fun. Now, I could present it as the ultimate shock. I said to Tom,
"By the way, about your misunderstanding that I was having an affair, the person I met that day was a lawyer. I'll be taking substantial alimony for cheating, so be prepared. Also, the demolition of this house starts next week. Make sure you move out by then."
"Next week?"
"Yes. By the way, didn't you notice? We've been gradually moving out the furniture and appliances. Didn't you realize?"
"Oh."
His reaction made it clear he never really cared about us. Leaving a stunned Tom in the living room, I urged my in-laws to return to their room. "Don't worry. I'll take care of the divorce papers." As I closed the living room door, I saw Tom collapse. I closed the door anyway. We did a small high five outside the now closed door. It was a sign of closure, but it wasn't over yet. The intercom rang loudly in the dark hallway. Instinctively, we all looked towards the entrance. The intercom rang incessantly with a shrill, persistent sound. Moreover, I could hear someone rattling the door. Could it be a burglar? I wondered. But then,
"Hey, Tom! Open up! Didn't you see my message? My electricity is cut off. It's so cold I might die. I don't care if your wife is there. Just let me in."
The shrill voice of a woman echoed through the door. That voice. Unmistakably, it was Tom's mistress. Showing up at such an hour, utterly inconsiderate. But what else to expect from someone involved with a married man? Clearly, she only thought of herself. I sighed heavily and signaled to my in-laws that I would handle the situation. Then, I went back to the living room. Tom was staring at the intercom monitor, surprised by his mistress's sudden arrival. He was startled to see me return too.
"Oh, this is..."
"Looks like you have a visitor," I said. I grabbed Tom's arm, trying to make excuses, and dragged him to the front door. I opened the door, pushed Tom out, and quickly closed and locked it.
"Hey! Open up! Let me in!"
"Tom, you finally came out. But who was that just now, your wife? She looks so plain."
"Hey, why are you here? I told you not to come near my house."
"Because. I don't know why, but my electricity got cut off. My heater won't work. Do you want me to freeze to death?"
"I can't deal with this now. Angela, please. Open the door. I'll send her away right now." "What? Did you even listen to me? Please, Sally. Just go home for today. Here, I'll give you money for a hotel."
Their loud conversation was clearly audible through the door. It was only a matter of time before the neighbors called the police. Then I remembered something important, and returned to the intercom. "Hey, Tom."
"Angela, just wait,
Is that mistress's child really yours?"
What? What are you saying? Just because you're not loved by Tom, you don't have to lie."
"No, it's not a lie. According to the detective agency, Sally, right? You've been dating multiple men, not just Tom, for several years."
"What are you suddenly saying? What do you mean? You said for sure it's my child." "Well, it seemed like the timing was right." "Timing? You admit there are other men. That's..."
Their argument intensified with my revelation. Soon, the sound of police sirens reached my ears. My father-in-law nodded at me, holding his smartphone. Apparently, he had called the cops. The two were still arguing loudly as the police arrived and took them away. Such a disturbance. I felt suddenly exhausted.
I'll submit the divorce papers first thing tomorrow morning. I thought this as I explained the situation to the police. The next day, following my resolution from the previous night, I submitted the divorce papers to the municipal office. Then, the day to demolish my in-laws' house arrived quickly. Surprisingly, Tom moved out before us, apparently crashing at his mistress's place. I was curious about the paternity of the child in question, but well, it didn't matter anymore. We too moved out of the house filled with memories. About a month later, I received an unexpected call from Tom. Despite my instruction to communicate through a lawyer, I answered the persistent ringing.
Hello?
Angela, please, I need your help. Yes? I asked, startled by Tom's sudden cry for help. Then, he dropped a bombshell. My house has burned down. What? He explained that after moving to his mistress's apartment, he accidentally started a fire due to a careless cigarette. I was surprised to hear that Tom had started smoking. Perhaps he began after our divorce? Surprised by the fire, Tom fled, leaving his mistress and child behind. As a result, the mistress suffered facial burns, and the child had complications from smoke inhalation. Moreover, they were homeless now and faced a claim for damages from the landlord. Well, it was a logical consequence. Please, Angela, you're the only one I can turn to. You own apartments, right? Please, let me, Sally, and the child stay in one. We need a place to live. Is this what they mean by audacity? I can't help but be impressed. I could let you stay, I said, and Tom's voice mixed surprise with joy. Really? But then, I brought him back to reality.
But I doubt you'd pass the screening, and with alimony and damage payments, I don't think you can afford the rent for my apartments.
So, no.
But why not? We were married, weren't we? You could help a little. We were married, now we're strangers.
And did you ever help me? I'm hanging up now. Goodbye. Later, I heard through the grapevine that Tom had to borrow money to pay alimony and damages. His mistake with the fire spread as a rumor, forcing him to quit his job. Now, he's juggling multiple part-time jobs to repay loans and cover the continuous expenses. The mistress, sustaining burns, clung to him, demanding treatment costs for herself and the child. As for me, I used my funds and the money from selling the land where my in-laws' house stood to remodel one of my apartments into a barrier-free residence for seniors. With this, I believe my in-laws can now live much more comfortably and securely than before. It was my selfish wish to keep living with my in-laws, who were initially planning to enter a facility as Tom had suggested. It was my wish to continue living with my in-laws. When I expressed my desire to continue living with them, they were moved to tears of joy. Our relationship has evolved beyond in-laws. We are a new family, planning to live together harmoniously.
What's with that look? People earning $60,000 a year are just poor, so get lost. A real scary face. It's scary how backward poor people are. That's right. Since you're here at the government office, why don't you get welfare for the bottom of the barrel?
Said my ex-husband, John, and his current wife, Emily, whom I encountered at the city hall where I had some business. They kept mocking me together. They probably thought I'd cry and leave, but I was not about to give in to them. Unfazed by their abusive words, I opened my mouth to respond. What? $60,000 is monthly income.
What?
They both let out an absurdly surprised reaction to my words.
You heard me. $60,000 is nothing like the old John.
As I laughed loudly, John turned bright red trying to argue back. They continued to obsess over me. But I finally gave them the payback they deserved. My name is Catherine White, 50 years old. Currently, I run a cooking class as a divorcee. I married my ex-husband, John Grishnam, when I was 26. We had a daughter, Hannah. We were just an ordinary family. John was a salaried worker, hard-working but a bit short-tempered and prone to anger. He had a male-dominant attitude and sometimes made disparaging comments about me and Hannah. However, he had a strong belief that as a man, he had to be responsible. In the early days of our marriage, I found his masculinity and reliability appealing, and we lived modestly but happily. I met John through a senior colleague's introduction, a common way to meet. My colleague was worried about me for not having a boyfriend even after 25. Honestly, I wasn't much attracted to the idea of marriage. I was more inclined towards working than getting married. But back then, not many people thought like me, and many believed that retirement due to marriage was a woman's happiness. Moreover, my parents, every time they contacted me, started talking about marriage. I lived away from home due to work, and I also had concerns about marrying to reassure my parents. When I met John, I started considering him as a potential marriage partner. John seemed to have similar concerns at that time. Everyone is getting married, and the parents are annoying about it. Honestly, I'm not interested in marriage, but if I were to marry, I want that to be someone like you, Catherine. One day, John said that to me. We weren't exactly madly in love, but I thought we could be good partners since our views on marriage were similar. We decided to get married within a year of meeting, but we really had no money. Both of us had been living alone before marriage, so we had almost no savings. Thus, our wedding was just a small meal with only family members. Unable to afford a new home, our married life began with John moving into my apartment. Given our situation, I intended to keep working after marriage. John had agreed to this before, but after we got married, he started showing reluctance about me working. It was some time after we got married. So, when are you gonna quit your job, Catherine? His words were like a bolt from the blue. I replied, bewildered. I'm gonna keep working. I told you that. John grumbled and spoke in dissatisfaction at my words. But working makes it seem like my earnings are poor. Normally, everyone retires after marriage, right? You should too. It was a complete turnaround from our prior discussions. To John, who suddenly started saying that, I opened my mouth with a bit of annoyance mixed in. Why? It's a fact we have no money, right? You agreed to me continuing to work. But my department head and manager, they already think you've quit your job. I can't just tell them to let you keep working. I was dumbfounded. John apparently told his bosses that I had quit. Nowadays, both partners working isn't unusual. But back then it wasn't as easy for women. John, influenced by others, began to think it was absurd for me to work and pushed me to quit. He even involved his parents, and they all opposed me working. You'll have kids soon, right? It's cruel to leave them in daycare while you work. Just quit your job. John's already told you, hasn't he? It's best for women to stay home. Even living far away, my mother-in-law would carelessly say such things. Despite my reluctance to quit, I ended up trapped at home. But John's salary didn't increase. Our reduced income directly impacted our lives. All I could do was cut back on expenses. Relying on John's sole income, we had to live frugally. Is this all for dinner? Before payday, seeing our meager meals, John would force a smile. What can I do? We're out of money. I'm working. I'll eat your share. I have to work for both of us. He'd say, sometimes even taking my food. Embarrassed about being broke, he took allowance from our budget. I was too ashamed to discuss it with anyone. John forbade me from telling anyone we were broke, so I couldn't borrow money. Of course, I had no money for personal expenses, and the stress built up with John not allowing me to work. Thinking about divorce, John said, if we had a child, you wouldn't need to think about such things, suggesting a child despite our finances. Pregnancy in our situation would worsen our finances. I said it was too early, but I got pregnant, making it difficult to divorce or work. Yet, I adored our daughter, Hannah. Fortunately, Hannah grew up healthy and well. As John got older, his salary increased a bit. It was still below average, but we got used to saving. Being a stay-at-home mom, I could attend all of Hannah's kindergarten and school events. It had been a tough journey with a lot of sacrifices, but we finally achieved a normal life. Then, one day, John casually remarked, "Maybe you should start working soon.
Staying at home all the time will age you fast.
I was speechless at his words. What do you mean? When we were struggling financially, you said it was shameful for me to work. Now you're telling me to work? John got irritated at my spontaneous response.
What's wrong? Don't you want to work? Being a housewife is just laziness.
I was shocked by his harsh words. It wasn't that I disliked working, but I just couldn't accept his attitude and words.
The new manager's wife works even after getting married and having kids. And she always looks so put together. And you, Catherine, don't you feel pathetic?
What kind of face was he making saying that? Had he forgotten what he had told me? There was so much I wanted to say, but with Hannah nearby, I desperately held back. Fine, I'll find a job. With resentment, I told him, and John seemed smug, as if he had one. So, I started a part-time job nearby. A cook at a supermarket. Hannah was in upper elementary school by then. Even though she has grown up a lot, she is still an elementary school student. Still young and needing attention, and with housework to do. On top of that, working meant I was exhausted every day at first. Even seeing me like this, John didn't change. What are you tired for from just a part-time job? Learn from me. He'd say arrogantly every day. But being a full-time employee is entirely different from juggling a job, housework, and childcare. When I used to work full-time, taking care of only myself, I don't remember being this tired. It's just part-time, but I have housework too. Can you help a little? Even just checking Hannah's homework would help. I told John. But he wouldn't cooperate. Homework? That's a mother's job. Then, can you at least help wash the dishes?
Tired from work and you want me to do housework? Housework is a woman's job.
Whenever I asked for help, he'd push everything onto me, using the excuse that I'm the mother and a woman. Fed up with his selfish behavior, I gave up expecting anything from John. Then, a few years after I started working, Hannah fell ill. Initially, we didn't know the cause and had to visit several hospitals. Of course, I took time off from work to be there for Hannah. But even as I struggled for her, John's response was cold. Is she faking illness to skip school? Don't take time off work. Your pay will decrease, he said. With Hannah visibly unwell, he showed no concern, just drinking beer. Eventually, we learned Hannah's illness wasn't life-threatening but required regular hospital visits. Having already taken much time off and needing more, I couldn't keep burdening my employer, so I resigned. I felt I had no choice, but John was furious, hurling abuse at me.
You can't even keep a part-time job? It was just 3 years?
I know resigning wasn't ideal, but I had no choice.
No choice? You just wanted to go back to being a pampered housewife, didn't you?
No matter how much I explained Hannah's condition and our situation, John wasn't empathetic. Instead, he kept pressuring me to work. Struggling with the impossible situation and John's emotional abuse, I was desperate to do something. Then one day, Hannah said,
"Mom, I'm sorry you had to quit your job because of me."
I was surprised. I knew John's words had reached Hannah's ears, but I didn't realize they had made her feel guilty. Filled with regret and resolve, I knew I had to show her it wasn't her fault.
It's not because of you, Hannah.
But I'm happy you're home. I want you to stay at home like before. Hannah. I thought hard. Then, I came up with the idea of working from home. But what could I do? After much thought, I decided to start a cooking class at home. I had always been confident in my cooking skills. With my experience living alone and working as a cook at the supermarket, I had a decent repertoire of recipes. Additionally, working at the supermarket for 3 years allowed me to obtain a chef's license. Thus, I was able to smoothly start my cooking class. Hannah was delighted. But John only ridiculed me.
Like you could succeed on your own. Who'd pay to learn cooking from you? Stop this futile effort and go find a real job, you hermit.
He constantly complained as I prepared for the cooking class. Still, I didn't give up. I am sure that hopefully even John will change his mind. However, success didn't come easily at first. Finding students was hard. Even those who came for a trial rarely became regulars, just as John had predicted. He continued to mock me. "Just get a proper job," he said easily, but considering Hannah's hospital visits and sudden illnesses, it was hard. John still had no intention of accompanying Hannah to the hospital, making it hard for me to start working again. Eventually, I continued the cooking class despite my worries. Then, one day, I had 2 students who attended every cooking class. "Your cooking is very popular with my family. My son doesn't like vegetables, but he ate your cooking the other day." They are such wonderful people. They also brought their friends, and the cooking class finally got off the ground about a year after its opening. Hannah was very happy, but John just looked at me coldly. I could sense that he still felt as if I was an idiot, but he was getting less and less talkative, as if he couldn't say anything. 5 years passed. My cooking class was doing well, albeit slowly. Hannah's health improved with growth, and her visits to the doctor became just annual checkups. We weren't very wealthy, but we were living happily without any major issues. Contrarily, my relationship with John had grown cold. I could distinctly feel his displeasure at my success, and I had nothing more to say to him. When we married, I thought we would be good partners, but things don't always go as planned. Yet, we had been together for so long. I thought we would continue this subdued relationship into our old age, but then one day, something happened. Hannah, a high school student now, came home from school with a troubled look on her face. "What's wrong? Did something happen at school?" When I asked, Hannah opened her mouth with a serious expression. "I saw Dad walking with some woman I don't know." "Dad? Someone from work? What about it?" "No." They were arm in arm, looking close. I felt the blood drain from my head when I heard her words. It was clear to me it was an affair, but I wasn't shocked about that. I was heartbroken that Hannah had to witness it and get hurt. It might be a misunderstanding. "I'll talk to your father about it." "Sorry for saying something like this." No. Thank you for telling me, even though it was hard." "It's not your fault, don't worry about it." I comforted Hannah with a smile, but inside I was seething with anger. That night, sensing the mood, Hannah went to her room early. "Is Hannah going to bed already?" "That's early," John said casually. After a while, I brought up the main topic. "By the way, Hannah said she saw you walking with some woman." "Me with a woman?" "She must have been mistaken." John replied with a thin smile, but I didn't miss the way his eyes darted around. "I'll forgive you, just tell me the truth," I said, staring him down. "There's no truth to tell," he stammered. But as I kept glaring silently, maybe realizing he couldn't escape, he laughed it off. "Well, I am attractive, you know. Maybe that did happen." "Don't be ridiculous. Do you realize you've hurt Hannah?" "What's it to you?" "Always nagging me about money, turning the house into some cooking class without asking. I have no place or comfort in this house. What's wrong with seeking comfort outside?" I was speechless at his words. Indeed, running the cooking class at home might have been inconvenient for John. Yet, he never encountered any of my students. He even mocked me, saying things like, "Huh? No one came today? Not very popular, are you, after the classes?" This was despite the fact that I was still cleaning up, highlighting his obliviousness to others' presence. To blame the discomfort he felt at home on my cooking class seemed unfair to me. Moreover, the lack of money wasn't a new issue and was partly due to John himself. Yet, to use that as an excuse for cheating and hurting Hannah is unforgivable. However, the cooking class doesn't bring in enough income for Hannah and me to live on. Knowing that I had no choice but to endure, John said, "If you're unhappy, I'll divorce you. I've been continuing this marriage thinking I'm sparing you, but divorcing you and remarrying her would be better for my happiness." "Just wait a minute. Hannah will need money for her education. You can earn it with your cooking class. If that's settled, then it's divorce." John said this and really brought home divorce papers the next day. I was being discarded. No, not just me. John was abandoning his own child, Hannah, too. I negotiated for child support, education expenses, and even filed for alimony for infidelity. Reluctantly, John agreed, so I consented to the divorce. But in the end, I never received those payments, and I was back to scrutinizing my bank account. Yet, even as a single mother, I never forgot to smile and supported Hannah as we lived through it together. It was a tough time, but our misfortune didn't last forever. A few years after the divorce, Hannah, now a working adult, got engaged. Currently, she lives far away for her job. I was at the city hall to get a copy of the family register for Hannah's marriage registration. That's when I heard a familiar voice. "Isn't that the teacher?" A mocking tone. When I looked in response, there he was, John, as expected. "Are you still running the cooking class?" His polite words felt more like mockery. I turned away abruptly. Yeah. Thanks to her agreeing to the divorce, I could marry Jennifer. "Got to be thankful," John said. Then, the woman next to John laughed. "Yeah. Thanks to her agreeing to the divorce, I could marry you, Jennifer. Got to be thankful." The woman next to him, referred to as Jennifer, appeared to be the mistress Hannah had seen before. Unashamed of getting involved with a married man, and no sign of remorse. Not only did they not pay alimony, but there wasn't even an apology. The woman standing next to John, looking down on me, seemed very wealthy. I couldn't help but notice the brand name bag in her hand. Noticing my gaze, John laughed even more mockingly. "Jennifer's parents own a company. You must be envious of this bag, right? It's something you could never afford in your life, isn't it?" "I'm not envious at all. Acting tough is pointless. How much are you earning now?" "About $20,000 a year?" It seemed John had become arrogant, buoyed by Jennifer's wealth. $60,000. I answered. "Oh, $60,000. Not bad. But with an income like that, you can't afford anything decent to eat, can you?" John continued to mock me loudly as usual. Why is he provoking me like this? I glared at him sharply. What's with that look? A poor person earning $60,000 should just get lost. Really, such a scary face. The envy of the poor is frightening. Since you're here at the city hall, why don't you apply for welfare or something? Jennifer joined in, mocking me alongside John. They probably thought I would cry and go home, but I refused to be intimidated by them. Without flinching at their abusive words, I spoke up to both of them. $60,000 is my monthly income." "What? An annual income of $60,000? That's not like the old John, you know," I said loudly, laughing. John, as expected, turned red and snapped back at me. "What? Back then? Back then? You were always around the $60,000 until we divorced. Really struggled marrying such a vain and poor person." He seemed taken aback by my response. John's trembling figure was almost comical. "Now, you're married to a lady who rides on her parents' coattails. That's great for you. An old lady, you say?" Jennifer glared at me, clearly offended by my words. "Yes. You're only a few years younger than me, right? It's ridiculous that someone your age is still living off your parents because they own a company. Do you even work?" Jennifer fell silent at my question. John had nothing to say either. It appeared they were living off Jennifer's parents without working themselves. Realizing this, I couldn't help but laugh. I can't believe he has to support two adults like you. Although he may be the president, he's a pitiful parent. What did you say? John almost raised his hand at me, but seemed to realize what would happen if he did something like that here. He lowered his hand, still frustrated. $60,000 a month, what a big lie. Stop meddling in other people's business, old hag. Oh, it's not a lie. And who started meddling first? How could an old lady like you earn $60,000 a month? At that, I started speaking with a smile on my lips. Jennifer, you don't cook? Cook? We have a maid for that. Don't lump me in with poor people. Our maid's truffle soup cooked with our company's vegetables is exquisite. Jennifer laughed triumphantly at her words, but my smile only grew wider. Is that so? What's with you, creepy?
I'm glad you like the dish I created.
At those words, both of them looked surprised. After divorcing John, I continued the cooking class. But the cooking class alone wasn't enough to sustain our lives. I had decided to close it down, but amazingly, a student brought many new participants, asking me not to quit. People brought more people, and 3 months after my divorce, my cooking class became so popular that it was hard to get a reservation. I want to spread your cooking to more people. A student who worked at a publishing company suggested that I publish a cookbook. So, I first published a cookbook aimed at housewives. Thanks to the housewives who cooked these recipes and spread them on social media, my books sold incredibly well, even in this era. I also published a cookbook of toddler-friendly recipes I had made with Hannah in kindergarten and budget recipes I created during tough times. Recently, I've been publishing cookbooks of various genres, including some with a more upscale approach. Among them, the truffle burdock rice made with mushrooms and truffle salt has various adaptations and continues to trend on social media. Surely, Jennifer's maid must have seen it and decided to make it. I pride myself that truffle burdock rice isn't something the average person would think of. You came up with it?
Yes, that's right. I'm happy that so many people are making it.
Jennifer was speechless at my words. Had she made the dish herself, she might have recognized my name as the creator, but it seemed she was just bragging about something made by others. She had no idea that I was the one who created it. Both of them fell silent, probably realizing that my monthly income of $60,000 wasn't a lie. Well, I'm busy, so I'll be going. Their earlier bravado had disappeared. Leaving the deflated pair behind, I finished my business and left the city hall. However, that evening, another incident occurred. John visited my apartment. Since I continued the cooking class after our divorce, I hadn't moved out. Regretting not moving when John showed up, I reluctantly went to the door. "Ah, sorry about earlier," he said with a silly grin on his face as I greeted him at the door. "What do you want?" "Well, you know, I supported and helped you with your cooking class, right? We haven't done property division, and I know it's late, but I think it's time we properly split the money." And my bad feeling was confirmed. John had come, apparently with the intention of claiming a share of my earnings. "What are you talking about? I don't recall any support from you. All I remember is being continuously ridiculed. There was no support at all." "And property division? What are you talking about? You know, you have money, right? We're supposed to split it when we divorce. We didn't divide it at the time of our divorce, so let's do it now." Hearing this, I was at a loss for words. What was he thinking? Why did he believe he had any right to my earnings? It was hard to understand.
"Yeah. Is Hannah here? She must be all grown up now. Maybe she wants to see me?"
John, as cheerful as ever, said this and tried to peek inside the house. I closed the door to block his view. "Hannah isn't here." "Oh. She lives far away. She's getting married soon." Hearing this, John's eyes lit up. I felt torn between thinking it was none of his business and wondering if he was happy for Hannah's happiness. But my thoughts were quickly betrayed.
"Who's the partner? A rich guy?"
"Well, he's a serious man about his work."
"Great. Hannah is lucky. She's beautiful like me, so she can easily marry into money. Women have marriage as an escape route, lucky them."
I had to suppress the urge to slap John. I had hoped and been let down so many times before. I was foolish to have even a shred of expectation that he might care as a father. It was clear that John lacked even a trace of fatherly affection.
"The wedding? I'd better keep my schedule open,"
John said, assuming he'd naturally be invited. "Then you'll have to ask Hannah about that, but if you want to meet the man who will be Hannah's husband, you and Jennifer can come over this weekend." You can at least come to say hello." My words seemed to make John quite happy, and he nodded eagerly. Just as I was about to obtain the family register transcript, John had suggested having a meal together. He left, saying he would come back later. I sighed as I watched his retreating figure. Then came the weekend. John arrived at my place with Jennifer. Jennifer, who was clearly an outsider, had me puzzled about her purpose for coming. I decided to let them into the house for now. However, when Hannah and her future husband, Richard, who had arrived earlier, saw the two of them, they exchanged puzzled glances. "Why did Dad come? And who's this? It's been a while since we met, and this is how you greet us? You're getting married, right?" John smiled and greeted Hannah, but Hannah looked at me with a hint of something to say. So, I smirked and greeted Richard. "Richard, this is the father of Hannah, John, my ex-husband, and Jennifer, his current wife. Nice to meet you." Hannah had told him about John being her father and the history of my divorce. Thus, Richard didn't seem too pleased with the two of them. He greeted them with confusion. In the midst of it all, I continued to speak. "You see, when we divorced, we didn't do any property division, and I didn't receive any alimony." "Well, today isn't the day for that kind of talk, is it?" "No, it's just the right time. Richard, you're a lawyer, and Jennifer is here too, so I'd like to have a proper conversation." Jennifer rolled her eyes at his words. Then she looked at John as if asking for help. Hannah seemed to understand the real reason I had called John today, and the corners of her mouth turned up. "Alimony, you say? I'm listening." "Well, based on the cases I've handled so far, in your case, you could probably get around $20,000 in terms of content." $20,000? Jennifer shouted and became flustered. "Well, of course. Even if you're wealthy, if you're not working yourself, there's no other option but to rely on your parents." John said it in a miffed tone. "You could just subtract that from the property division and give it to me." I couldn't help but burst into laughter at John, who was still saying such things. Richard also said in wonder. "Property division? I heard Catherine had no money at all at the time of the divorce. If she didn't then, she does now. The property division is based on the assets formed during the marriage." Richard explains to John in a daze. "You only had about $6,000 in savings, so, by simple calculation, you will have to pay $3,000 to Catherine." What? Things went as I had hoped, and I felt a little better. When we divorced, John took all the savings. I was so happy that I could do what I wanted to do. "Richard, I want him to pay me exactly what he owes me. May I ask you to intervene?" I asked Richard again in front of the two of them. John and Jennifer looked at each other and turned pale at his reply. I later filed a claim in the proper form, but as usual, there was still no payment. However, I could not cause any more trouble for Richard and Hannah. I finally decided to take the last resort. I am going to terminate the contract. I sent a notice to the fruit and vegetable company with which I had been doing business. The fruit and vegetable company had been entrusted with all of my vegetables since I published my book. Sales of meal kits containing the vegetables I use in my cooking have also been favorable. They account for a large portion of that company's revenue, and we have been able to conclude a mutually beneficial contract. It was precisely because of John and Jennifer that I decided to terminate the contract. Sure enough, the president of the fruit and vegetable company came to me immediately with the vice president. "Is there something amiss? Your meal kits continue to be well received and we anticipate continued sales. Terminating the contract now is not the way to go." Both the president and vice president looked at me with difficulty and managed to plead with me to continue the contract. "Of course, we are grateful to your company for all the help you have given us, but I don't want to be involved any longer." My sharp words made them break out in a cold sweat as they searched for a reason. As if in answer, I told them. To be precise, I don't want to have anything more to do with Jennifer, the president's daughter and the vice president's sister. The vegetable and fruit company I had contracted with was run by the family home of John's wife, Jennifer. Yes. Of course, I didn't know that at first. However, when Jennifer said the vegetables our company handles and that she was the president's daughter, I thought it might be possible. There are not many fruit and vegetable companies around here. So I reviewed the contract and found Jennifer's name on the transcript of the fruit and vegetable company. She was not working. It was obvious that she was a director in name only. I knew that the vice president had a sister, and when I found out that they were family, I racked my brains trying to come to terms with this fact. However, as usual, neither John nor Jennifer were sincere toward me. I felt that it would be unfair for me to continue to be the only one who was being treated with sincerity. I told the president and vice president the facts as they were. It can't be true that Jennifer's husband was your husband.
She did such an outrageous thing.
The two of them simply apologized flatly, their faces pale.
I am sorry. Jennifer's name will be removed from the board. And, Dad, you have to take responsibility for spoiling her. I agree. I am really sorry for what she has done to you.
And so, the president resigned. Jennifer's name was erased from the list of directors, and of course she lost her financial support.
This Catherine who runs the cooking class here is a hag.
Jennifer was so upset that she spent several days shouting this in front of our apartment, but thanks to this, everything about what happened was exposed on the internet. The fruit and vegetable company was in dire straits, but I decided to re-sign the contract with the vice president because of his personality and responsiveness. He kept apologizing to me, but thanks to him, I was able to get the alimony paid without incident. Needless to say, John and Jennifer were not happy. They had not even worked, and what awaited them was a life of poverty with no money. Both of them were abandoned by their families and seemed to be living in a small apartment. How I came to know about this is that Hannah contacted me.
Dad asked me to lend him some money.
Of course I refused. It was pathetic that she couldn't rely on anyone and had to beg her daughter for money. I think he's working in a day factory now. He shouldn't have quit his job. He must have thought he was rich after marrying that woman and got carried away. Hannah laughed at that. I could finally laugh at the sound of her laughter. John had always been so angry with me, but I thought he had finally put me through hell. I know the pain of living without money. I hope that John will experience that pain this time with his own body. I continued to work well after that. Now, at Hannah's suggestion, I also put my recipe videos on video sharing sites. I am more than happy that people are happy with my cooking.
Hannah will soon have a baby. I am thinking of writing a book of delicious baby food recipes.
There's no portion for anyone but family. What?
Oh?
Didn't you hear me?
You're not her real mother, yet you brazenly sit in the mother of the bride's seat. We can't possibly serve food to such a shameless stranger.
Everyone was stunned into silence by Emily's sudden outburst.
Just so you know, I don't consider you my mother. It was a huge inconvenience for me, your daughter, when you remarried because of your own reasons. I never wanted you at my wedding in the first place.
Emily, is that all you wanted to say? What? Dad, what's wrong? Ignoring Emily's anxious look, John turned to me and said, "Let's go." After John suggested we leave, I too stood up from my seat. Yes. And so, my husband and I quietly left the venue, leaving the rest to that reliable person. After that, Emily, who had berated me at the wedding, would face her consequences. I'm Linda, a 55-year-old high school teacher. I was focused on my career and remained single until I was 45, but then I got married 10 years ago. My husband is a fellow high school teacher of the same age, named John Smith. John and I were colleagues at the same high school when we were new teachers. He transferred to another school after 2 years and married a woman he met through an acquaintance. However, they divorced due to his ex-wife's infidelity. At that time, John had an 11-year-old daughter, whom he decided to raise on his own. It seemed difficult for him to balance work and parenting. During this time, as a friend, I got in touch with John. His daughter, Emily, was very sweet and well-behaved then. As I spent time with John and Emily, I gradually became close to this father-daughter duo. 2 years later, John proposed to me, and we got married. I legally adopted Emily, John's daughter, and the three of us began living together. For my first marriage, I suddenly became a mother to a 13-year-old girl. For Emily's sake, I decided not to have my own children and consulted with John about it. We were planning to build a happy family, but Emily's behavior towards me started to change. She used to be kind and obedient but suddenly became rebellious. For example, when I was hanging laundry, she'd complain, "Hey, don't mix your stuff with mine." Despite this, I thought, she's just going through a sensitive phase, and didn't respond harshly. Oops. Sorry about that. I'll be more careful from tomorrow. Well, it's understandable for a girl to have difficulty accepting her father's new wife. Over these 2 years, things have changed from just meeting occasionally. I kept reminding myself of this and tried to bond with Emily as soon as possible. My biggest concern was John's ex-wife, Karen, who lived nearby. Karen frequently met Emily. Despite John not being very approving of it since he divorced her due to infidelity. Yet Emily wanted to see her real mother, Karen, and it was inevitable. Since she's her real mother, it's probably unavoidable. So, John couldn't really refuse Emily's requests. Even if parents divorce for their own reasons, a child still misses their real mother. Considering this, I didn't oppose Emily meeting Karen. But this meant I couldn't close the gap between Emily and me. Moreover, Emily often used her father's remarriage as an excuse for her behavior. When parents divorce or remarry, it's a huge inconvenience for the kids. Since I'm the victim of being tossed around by my parents' decisions, the least you can do is treat me well as your daughter. Emily said this as she demanded allowance from John and treated me like a servant. If I tried to address it, she'd snap back, "You have no right to act all high and mighty. If you defy me, I'll tell Dad and have you thrown out." I wanted to discuss this with John, but since we both worked as teachers, Emily was usually with us on evenings and weekends. I tried to bring it up through text messages or messaging apps, but Emily once found out. "That's awful. Whispering behind my back is the worst," she exclaimed. Since then, she meticulously checks John's phone. In this way, our family of 3 continued our strained living situation. Emily went to college, but mostly played around for 4 years. She didn't get a job after graduating and just loafed about. With few friends, she mostly hung out with Karen, it seems.
Hey Emily, if you're not going to find a job, why not at least try part-time work?
I said this out of concern for her future, but Emily didn't like that idea. Stop nagging. You and Dad both work as teachers, so we're financially comfortable. Why do I need to work? No, that's not it. I thought it would be good for your future if you worked. That's none of your business. If worst comes to worst, I'll just get married and become a stay-at-home wife. Emily had such unrealistic expectations. Nowadays, it's not easy to find someone who wants a partner who aims to be a stay-at-home spouse right from the start. But her response to me was always, "You don't understand because you've never been a stay-at-home wife." In Emily's mind, being a stay-at-home wife meant just not working and staying at home. She always ran away whenever I tried to teach her housework. Whenever things got tough, she'd escape to Karen's place. I regretted not opposing her meetings with her biological mother. But I realized this wasn't helping Emily. So, I decided to seek advice from a trusted friend. An old high school friend named Susan Johnson. Susan, who's good at caring for others and skilled in communication, runs a bar. She attended my wedding and remembered Emily. When I shared my concerns about Emily's inability to become independent, Susan listened empathetically.
Ah, I see. Back then, Emily was just graduating from elementary school and seemed like a quiet, nice girl. Living together really brings out different challenges, huh?
I felt relieved to finally share my worries with someone. Thank you. Just talking about it has made me feel much better. No problem. I couldn't offer much advice, but come and talk to me anytime. I'll always be here. Truly, friends are invaluable. Feeling better, I decided to try talking to Emily again. But when I got home, Emily was unexpectedly getting ready to go out. "Oh, you're back? I'm heading out now." "Right now?" It wasn't urgent, so I thought we could talk later. But then, Emily shared something surprising.
Actually, Mom's getting remarried. The guy is 10 years younger than her and super handsome. I'm excited to meet him. She said she's going to introduce him to me, so I'm going to see him now.
Karen's getting remarried. I was surprised, but if my mother Karen remarried, I was hoping that Emily wouldn't visit her so often anymore. But even after Karen got remarried, Emily's visits didn't decrease. Every Saturday night, she'd say, "I'm going to Mom's," and leave. I was worried Emily might be intruding on Karen's new marriage. Maybe it would be better if Emily found someone and got married soon, I suddenly thought. I wanted to teach her more about household chores. Just then, Emily came home in a great mood. A young man, a bit older than Emily, was with her. "I'm home." "Oh, let me introduce him. This is my fiancé, Michael," she beamed.
I'm Michael Smith. Pleased to meet you.
"Fiancé?" I was taken aback by the sudden news. Now that I thought about it, Emily had been in a good mood lately and wasn't as rebellious. Had she found a boyfriend without me knowing?
Surprised, huh? Michael's an elite salesman at the parent company of where Mom's husband works. I was jealous of Mom's happiness and said, I wish I had someone too, and she introduced me to him.
"Oh, is that so? That's great." Michael seemed very serious. I was a bit worried whether he could handle a daughter like Emily who couldn't do much. But my worries were short-lived. Emily's wedding plans were progressing smoothly. However, there was one problem. Karen wanted to attend the wedding. Of course, as Emily's biological mother, she'd want to see her daughter's big day. But having my ex-wife there while John and I would be attending as Emily's parents might cause a stir among the relatives. And it could be awkward for Michael's family. I was at my wit's end about how to have Emily's wedding without any issues and went to consult Susan. I wonder if I was wrong to allow Emily to see her mother all this time? Is it really okay to invite her to the wedding? As I asked this, Susan looked serious and began to speak. And that's when she told me an unbelievable truth.
No way. I thought it couldn't be, but that was definitely Emily. And the man with her, in his mid-30s.
I was taken aback by Susan, the bar owner's eyewitness account. And then I realized that Karen wanting to attend the wedding wasn't just to see Emily in her bridal glory. "Leave it to me, I've got a plan," Susan said, seemingly having a strategy in mind. My mind was in a panic, but I decided to leave everything to Susan. And then, on the day of the wedding. The wedding, attended only by close relatives, was held in a restaurant style. But when I tried to take my seat, I noticed something was off. "Huh? There's no meal at my seat." "Really? Maybe there was a mix-up with the staff? I'll go check." He returned, saying that the bride had requested no meal be served at my seat. Why would she? I felt a shiver run down my spine. John looked frustrated and was about to go to the bride's dressing room, but it was almost time to start, so I hurriedly stopped him. "It's okay, John. I'm not in the mood to eat anyway. I'll ask her about it after the ceremony." John sat down with a bitter look, despite my reassurance. "What is Emily thinking?" he muttered. As the lights dimmed and the bride and groom entered, Emily passed by us and John whispered to her, "Why isn't there a meal for Linda?" "Oh, John. It's really fine." I whispered back, but Emily loudly said for everyone to hear, "There's no meal for those who aren't family." "What? Huh? Didn't you hear? You're not her real mother, yet you sit here so boldly in the mother of the bride's seat. It's outrageous to serve a meal to such an outsider." The room fell silent at Emily's sudden harsh words. "Just so you know, I don't think of you as the one who raised me. Your remarriage for your own convenience was a huge inconvenience to me as your daughter. That's why I didn't want you at my wedding in the first place." After saying her piece, Emily walked away from us. Then John stood up. Is that all you have to say, Emily? What? Dad, what's wrong? Ignoring Emily's anxious look, John turned to me and said, "Let's go." I stood up too. Okay. And so, John and I left the venue without another word.
Wait! Dad, where are you going? Forget her, come back!
Emily's cries echoed behind us, but John and I left without a word, leaving the rest to Susan waiting backstage. When we got home, Susan called us via video. "Hello. Are you home? I'm about to head in, watch this." "Please, but how did you get permission from the restaurant?" "I know the owner, so asking for this much was no problem." Susan said this as she stood near the entrance of the venue. Through the video call, I could hear the grooms yelling from behind the door.
"Emily! How could you do this to a parent who raised you?"
"But, it's my wedding, and I didn't want a woman who's not my real mother attending as my mom. I have a real mom, after all." Emily's feeble voice was also heard. It seems she really wanted her biological mother, Karen, to be at the mother's seat. She intended to exclude only me, but she probably didn't expect John to leave as well.
"That's why your real mother is also here, right?"
"But making her sit in the back like that is just awful." Amidst this argument, Susan burst in through the door.
"All right, enough with the arguing."
Everyone was stunned by Susan's sudden entrance. Emily looked at Susan, as if to say, "Who are you? Hey, what are you doing? Don't just barge in like that." "Oh, sorry about that. I've got permission from the venue. I'm Linda's friend and the owner of Susan's bar." Susan's bar. Seems like you recognize the name of the bar written on the signboard? It's right in front of the hotel you frequent. Hotel. Michael, the groom, looked at Emily with a puzzled expression, and Emily's face turned pale as she averted her eyes. Then, Susan pulled out a tablet from her bag and turned the screen towards the bride and groom. On it was a video of a man and woman, arms linked, entering a hotel. "This is Emily and that man." "Yes. The husband of Emily's mother. I happened to see them when I stepped out of my bar. Since then, almost every Saturday at this time, the two of them have been entering this hotel, right up until last night."
"No! Stop it!"
Emily screamed in desperation, but at that moment, Karen, who was sitting in the back, strode forward towards Emily.
"So, it was true. I thought it was suspicious when you introduced him to me. I introduced the best man I knew to you. What kind of person are you?"
Karen glared at Emily with a look that was no longer a mother's face, but filled with the resentment of a woman whose man was taken. I also, until I heard from Susan, thought Emily's frequent outings were either dates with Michael or visits to Karen. I never imagined she would be involved with her mother's new husband. Emily, glared at by Karen, defiantly retorted.
"Well, I was jealous that Mom married such a handsome man. And as soon as she remarried, she stopped paying much attention to me. I was just so upset. That's why I introduced someone like Michael to you. You said you wanted to marry soon and become a housewife, and he's well off enough. What more do you want?"
"That's why I'm planning to behave properly after the marriage. But Mom's husband is more handsome, so I thought it wouldn't hurt to, before the wedding."
"Seeing each other every week, and you call that a little?"
This was indeed a clash of raw emotions between women. Like daughter, like mother. From what I could see on the screen, the relatives present were all taken aback. However, Michael, who was listening nearby, seemed to have reached his limit.
"Enough is enough. So, Emily, you just wanted to get married and chose me for that? If that's your attitude towards marriage, then I'm out."
Ah, just as I feared. Nowadays, even elementary school kids wouldn't say they just want to be brides. In this era, marriages won't work unless the partners truly love and support each other. Yet, Emily still seemed not to understand, looking at Michael with pleading eyes.
"Eh? But I thought I'd be happy with you, Michael. Why would you say something so cruel?" "That's just your selfish perspective, Emily. Sure, I want to make the woman I love happy. But you're just relying on my income, thinking about having an easy life. I don't like a cunning woman who chooses a marriage partner for such reasons.
Michael stated this clearly and firmly. Even Emily had no comeback to that. Besides, I can't forgive the fact that you cheated right before the wedding. Emily, prepare yourself. I'll be demanding a fair compensation for this betrayal.
What? No, please, Michael, forgive me.
Emily's tearful plea for forgiveness was in vain. The relatives around were saying, this marriage is definitely off now. Even Michael's parents seemed to agree with this decision. Emily, overwhelmed with despair, hung her head and began to cry.
No! I thought I was finally going to get married. What am I supposed to do now?
No matter how much Emily cried or screamed, no one would sympathize. Even her biological mother, Karen, was still looking at her with eyes full of resentment.
I'm done with you. You're no longer a daughter to me, nor I am mother to you. Don't involve me in your life anymore.
Oh, that reminds me, I have something to tell you too, Karen. Susan suddenly said, as if she just remembered. What? What are you talking about all of a sudden? I thought I had seen your husband somewhere before. He's been to my bar several times, each time with a different woman.
What?
Karen's face froze. Susan, even in the midst of conversation, made sure to show the faces of those she spoke about on the video. Your husband, Daniel Roberts, right? I asked a regular customer who knows him. Turns out he's known for getting involved with various women and quickly breaking up with them.
No way!
Moreover, I heard it's a common thing for him to cheat with younger women, even when married. And this time, he got involved with his new wife's daughter. Karen was shocked by Susan's revelation and collapsed on the spot. Well, you're not one to talk, right? You abandoned your daughter when she was still in elementary school to elope with a younger man. And after that, you've been swapping men frequently and having fun. That's the truth, as far as I know. Why do you know that?
Don't underestimate how well connected I am. It's easy for me to find out such things for a close friend.
Karen seemed at a loss for words. As if her mother's tragedy didn't matter, Emily suddenly raised her voice. Wait a minute. Now's not the time for this kind of talk. If I can't get married, I have to go back to Dad's place. I'm calling him right now. Emily said, getting up. Then, Susan handed her cell phone to Emily. It seemed like the moment of revelation was at hand. If you're calling home, it's already connected. Here you go. Seeing my face on the phone screen, Emily realized she had been watched all along.
That's so mean. You've been spying on me?
Emily said, looking at me with a strained expression. Emily.
You kicked me out of the wedding venue, and you talk about being treated harshly? Just put Dad on the phone, will you? He's there, isn't he?
Emily was visibly agitated and showed no remorse in her tone. Then, John, who had been silently listening beside me, spoke up. Emily. I'm here, but you have something to say to your mother first.
Who cares about that? Dad. Listen to me. My wedding's been called off. Help me, please, Dad.
Emily was desperately seeking help, but John calmly responded. Emily. I told you before. It was Linda who saved you when your mother abandoned you. I was trying to raise you alone, but as a father, I wasn't sure how to deal with a girl. At that time, Linda listened to my worries and helped me genuinely. Emily's expression twisted slightly. Perhaps she didn't want to hear such things now. Yet, John added more. No, it wasn't just me. She was genuinely concerned about you too. That's why I decided to remarry Linda. It wasn't just a matter of convenience for adults. Emily looked down, her expression dark. I know that. But still, I felt like she took Dad away from me. I knew it logically, but I just couldn't stand her. Emily's words reminded me of when I first married John. I understood it must have been hard for a teenager to accept her father's remarriage. But now, Emily was an adult. She needed a more pragmatic outlook. Now that her marriage had fallen through, she was seeking her father's help. She probably thought that if anything went wrong, her parents would fix it. But this wouldn't be good for her in the long run. I decided to be firm with Emily. Emily. I'm sorry for coddling you, thinking you were pitiable. But you're an adult now, and you can't keep thinking Dad will always save you when things get tough. I believed I was only stating the obvious as a parent. But Emily's response was unexpected.
Shut up. I'm talking to Dad. And what do you mean by pitiable? That makes it sound like I'm some poor, pathetic daughter. Don't get me wrong. I was the one who allowed your marriage to Dad. Emily.
John couldn't contain his anger at Emily's selfish attitude. Seeing John's yelling, Emily teared up. Dad, don't be so mad. I'm your only precious daughter, right? Who's more important to you, me or her? Just leave her and let me come home. My marriage is off, and I have nowhere else to go, please.
No. You said terrible things to my beloved wife, treating her as non-family. If that's the case, I can't accept you as family anymore either. You need to atone for your affair and learn to live on your own.
So, no. Emily replied, her voice trailing off. In the venue, the staff, realizing the wedding was cancelled, had started cleaning up. The relatives were also gradually leaving the scene. Michael was speaking seriously to Emily.
Emily, for now, I'll have my lawyer handle the matter of the compensation. All further communications will be through the lawyer, so respond when you're contacted.
With that, Michael left the venue with his parents. Susan, who had been sending the video the whole time, stepped away and called from the hallway.
Hello.
Well, I guess that wraps up this case, doesn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Everything worked out smoothly because of you.
Straightforward. You've had a tough time, but I don't think Emily will come back now. From now on, just enjoy your time with your husband. Susan had always been concerned about me. I was filled with gratitude for her kindness.
Thank you, Susan.
As Susan had predicted, Emily never returned home. Apparently, she moved into Karen's apartment. Karen, after that day, became furious with her husband over his affair with her daughter and decided to divorce. Since that incident, Karen became furious with her husband over his affair with her daughter Emily, leading to a heated argument and ultimately deciding to divorce. Upon arriving at Karen's place, Emily immediately blamed her mother, claiming, "My marriage being called off is your fault." She, for some reason, held her mother responsible for the failed marriage. In response, Karen blamed Emily for her divorce. They argued daily, and their confrontations escalated. They would shout, throw things, and even get into physical altercations. This often continued until late at night, leading to complaints from other apartment residents. Eventually, both mother and daughter were evicted. The reason I know all this is because Susan told me everything. Emily and Karen had to move into a shabby apartment and struggled financially. Karen, intending to demand alimony from her ex-husband, found he had left quickly, changing his number and cutting off all contact. Struggling to make ends meet, Karen apparently tried to find work at various nightclubs, attending numerous job interviews. However, due to her age, she couldn't secure employment anywhere. Susan, having heard this from a friend who owns a bar, decided to hire Karen at her own establishment. Karen is working diligently to support herself, but it seems she often voices her grievances about Emily during her breaks. It appears that the mother-daughter duo will continue their endless cycle of conflicts, no matter what. Karen, having neglected her maternal duties, should at least now take responsibility for Emily. Emily, contacted by the lawyer, paid Michael's compensation, straining her finances even further. No longer able to rely on her father, she finally started working part-time. Emily, who had lived off her parents and played around, would now face the harsh realities of society. As for us, with Emily gone, we thought we'd have a peaceful couple's life. However, with over 20 years of teaching experience, it wasn't that simple. We were invited to former students' weddings, visited them for baby showers, and being high school teachers meant we were always busy. Lately, many former students, now with kids, visited us on weekends. Especially me, being single until my mid-40s, I had been a confidant for many students in both personal and academic matters. Many of my former students visited our home with their families, treating it like a return to their parental home. It's gratifying as a teacher to be so cherished, but there was also this kind of former student. Ms. Smith, actually, my parents got divorced, and now I don't have a family home to show my child their grandparents. Oh dear, that must be tough. Yes. But when I bring my wife and child to visit you, my kid gets so happy. It's as if they think of your place as my family home. Recently, there are not a few students who don't have a family home to return to due to their parents' divorce. Moreover, the children of my students often call me grandma. It seems they really do think of our home as their own family's house. John even teases me by saying, it's like we suddenly have more grandchildren. I don't have children of my own, so it feels a bit embarrassing to be treated like a real grandmother. However, the fact that my students find our home a comfortable and welcoming place is something I take pride in as a teacher. Therefore, our weekends are filled with joy and liveliness, with visits from various students, making life with John all the more enjoyable. Even though Emily is no longer with us, we have many students who rely on us. It's true that people can't always understand each other, even if they are legally family. What's important is the connection between hearts, the bond with those we can trust. We, as a couple, plan to continue cherishing these relationships with those who truly need us.
Auntie, it's terrible! Your husband is about to board a ship with another woman. You must stop him immediately. Don't let him get on that ship, or something awful will happen.
I received a sudden call from Emily. Curious about what it was, I answered and heard her speak in a panicked tone. I couldn't understand what was going on at first, but after a moment, I remembered Emily's mysterious ability. As soon as the call ended, I immediately messaged my husband, Mark. However, Mark laughed off Emily's words, saying, "Trust a child's play? Come on." He didn't take her seriously. If Mark was going to react that way, I decided to leave it be. But with another woman? What I had heard was that he was going on a business trip. Then why would he need to go with another woman? Questions and doubts began to cloud my mind. Could this be an affair? If that's the case, I can't forgive him. I decided that I had to thoroughly expose what Mark had done, take revenge, and make him regret it. With that in mind, I decided to take action. My name is Linda Smith, a housewife in my 40s. I live with my husband, Mark. Our marriage isn't perfect, but we have a reasonably good life and Mark works a decent job, ending each day as such. That's how I spent my days. Mark, due to his work, is often away from home. Apparently, a new employee had recently joined, and Mark was spending a lot of time training him. As the person responsible for the training, Mark had to juggle his regular duties too, which meant his workdays became longer, and he often wouldn't return home until midnight. Of course, this left no time for us as a couple. If this continued for a long time, it was only natural that our relationship would suffer. One day, I saw Mark relaxing in the living room, apparently having a day off. Thinking it was a good opportunity, I decided to make some time for us as a couple.
Mark, do you have the day off today? Why don't we have some snacks together? I have some delicious treats someone gave me,
I said, intending it to be a small act of kindness. I always appreciated how hard he worked for our family and our life together, so I thought it might be a nice break for him. But the response I got from Mark was unexpected. Huh? What's the point of doing that? I'm tired from working every day, and now I have to spend my day off for you too? Can't I just relax in the living room without being bothered? I didn't mean it like that. I just thought it would be nice for you to relax more, so I called out. If it was unnecessary, I'm sorry. To think I'd rather be working than spending time with you. From now on, even if you see me in the house, don't talk to me.
It's nothing but a nuisance.
Mark's words made me dizzy. Why did I have to be spoken to so harshly? All I did was try to be considerate of him. Sure, I might have been too meddlesome. But did that deserve such harsh words? If he had just said, "I'm not in the mood today, sorry," I would have backed off quietly. His unreasonable words made me angry. Was it necessary to speak so harshly? I just wanted you to relax a little. Have you thought about how I feel, being treated so dismissively? I appreciate you working hard every day to provide for us, but that doesn't mean you can treat me like this, I retorted, perhaps a bit too strongly. That was the beginning of a nightmare.
Huh?
Mark responded to my words with a voice filled with anger.
Are you serious? Do you realize what you just said? You're challenging me, your husband? I work every day for you, bringing in money, and this is how you treat me? Do you think that attitude is acceptable?
His words came at me like a machine gun, and I couldn't respond, falling silent. Mark took that as an opportunity to continue with even harsher words.
I thought I had married you in vain. You weren't particularly attractive, not young, and even the housework was sloppy and not well done. Every time I came home, I had to sigh at the dusty rooms. As a housewife, it's pathetic not to be able to do even the basic chores. Don't you feel sorry for me, working like a horse every day for someone who's just a burden? I'm sorry, but... No buts. Just don't defy me anymore. You're a wife, and a failed one at that. If you defy me again, we're getting a divorce.
With that, Mark stomped off to his room. I was initially speechless from the pain of his words. I was accused of being sloppy with the housework, but I never intended to be. I had tried my best with the daily chores. But achieving perfection in all household tasks every day is impossible, even for the most experienced housewife. And being told I lacked youth and cuteness was a huge shock. Sure, I'm in my 40s and not young anymore. But I had tried to be attractive in my own way. No matter how hard I tried, my efforts never seemed to reach Mark. That realization was shockingly painful. Maybe Mark no longer loved me. His words, calling me a burden, might truly reflect his thoughts, and his threat of divorce might be sincere. I didn't want a divorce. Because I still couldn't let go of my love for Mark. If possible, I wanted to continue as husband and wife. That was my wish, albeit a faint one. So, from that day on, I tried even harder. To regain some youthfulness and to perfect my housework. My friends said I might be trying too hard, but I thought only this much effort might reach Mark. As I continued to put in the effort daily, I started to feel more fatigued. But I didn't stop. I wanted to be seen as attractive by Mark again, with all my heart. That was my motivation. Then one day, Mark told me he was going on a long business trip. He would be traveling to a distant place, and he planned to take a ferry there. Mark going on business trips was common, so I had become accustomed to preparing for them. As usual, I packed his suitcase and watched him leave for the port. Ideally, I would have liked to see him off at the port, but he had previously said he didn't want that during business trips, so I complied and just wished him well from home. I wondered if Mark had reached the port by now. About 30 minutes before the ferry was scheduled to depart, I finished my chores and decided to take a break. That's when I noticed a barrage of missed calls on my phone. Looking at the call history, it seemed to be from my brother's phone. Wondering what it could be, I called back. Soon, I heard my niece Emily's voice on the other end, sounding very anxious. "What's wrong, Emily?" I asked, feeling a sense of dread. Then Emily said something shocking that would change my fate.
Aunt Linda, it's terrible. Your husband Mark is boarding a boat with another woman. Stop him right now. He shouldn't get on that boat, or something awful will happen.
Emily's voice sounded very urgent. Emily, though only 8 years old, possessed a mysterious power. It was as if she could see the future, accurately predicting events that would happen. Because of past experiences where Emily's predictions came true, both my brother and his wife and I believed in her special ability. This was another of Emily's future predictions. However, I had my doubts about one part. Another woman? Mark was supposed to be on a business trip on a ferry, so there shouldn't be any need for him to be with another woman. Why then was he with another woman? A horrible suspicion crossed my mind. But if this was true, I couldn't stay silent. I had to uncover the truth.
Thank you, Emily. Auntie will be fine,
I said to her and hung up the phone. I decided to take action to discover the truth. If Emily's prediction was correct, something was bound to happen. With that thought, I turned on the news just in case. After leaving it on for a while, a loud alarm sound came from the TV, and breaking news flashed on the screen. The ferry Mark was on had capsized due to an accident. Thankfully, since it was a smaller ferry and the tourist season had passed, there weren't many victims. However, Mark and the other woman Emily mentioned were on board, and there were a few people seriously injured. Soon after the news, I received a call from an unknown number. It was from a major hospital. Apparently, after the accident, Mark was taken to this hospital and was now in critical condition, unconscious. They asked if I knew anything about the woman he was with. But I didn't know anything about her, so I honestly said no. If he regains consciousness, may I come to visit? Could you please keep me updated? I asked. They agreed, so I decided to use this time to investigate Mark's actions without visiting the hospital yet. I hadn't yet confirmed whether Mark was indeed cheating. That wouldn't do. I needed solid evidence. A few days later, Mark's belongings were returned. Most of them were water damaged and ruined. Of course, Mark's phone was broken too. However, when I took it to a phone repair shop, they said they could fix it and recover the data. I immediately asked them to repair it. Everything Mark had done must be on that phone. I would probably find out about the woman he boarded the ferry with. Feeling confident, I waited for the phone to be fixed. A few days later, the shop called to say the repair was complete, and I went to pick up Mark's phone. Carelessly, Mark hadn't set a password, so anyone could access the contents of his phone. As soon as I got home, I turned on Mark's phone and checked the history. There, I found frequent exchanges with a woman named Jessica in the messaging app. Jessica seemed to work at a night spot that Mark visited on business. Initially, their conversations were typical, like thanking him for visiting the club. It seemed Mark took quite a liking to Jessica, as he began visiting her club more frequently. Their conversations gradually became more intimate, and they started meeting outside the club as well. The chat history was filled with explicit expressions of affection, like saying "I love you." Further examination revealed that Mark's frequent absences from home, supposedly due to work, were actually to spend time with Jessica. When he claimed to be on business trips, he was actually traveling with her. And those late nights he said were due to overtime? He spent them at Jessica's club or alone with her. It seemed that Mark and Jessica's relationship had indeed deepened over time. So, all this time, the overtime and business trips were lies. Even the excuse about training new employees was fabricated. All of it, just to create opportunities to be with Jessica. Lies spun to deceive me. I was furious when I uncovered the truth from Mark's phone. Immediately, I called his parents. "I need to see you right away," I told them, and they made time for me. I went to see them with Mark's phone in hand. When I showed them the contents of Mark's phone, they were stunned, unable to believe it at first. But the chat history didn't lie. As I showed them the entire history of Mark and Jessica's exchanges, his parents sighed deeply and then apologized to me.
Our son has done something unforgivable. We can't apologize enough. If you want a divorce, we understand. Take as much alimony as you want. We're truly sorry. Linda, you've been working hard for us every day, and this is how he repays you. We'll make sure he regrets his actions. Please, rest assured.
I received strong support from Mark's parents. But this was my battle. I couldn't leave everything to them. I made a request to his parents to let me be the one to confront Mark about this situation and asked them to observe the situation quietly until then. When I told my story, my father-in-law frowned and said, "But we can't just leave everything to Linda," to which I replied, "I'm really angry about being betrayed like this. Even if you do something about it, it won't calm my anger. I need to punish him myself to be satisfied. So, I would appreciate your cooperation. Understanding my feelings, he said, okay, if that's the case, we'll help. Linda, regardless of him being our son, we want you to completely ruin that fool. Even if you go too far, we'll take the responsibility. Go ahead and carry out your revenge as you wish. My son did something absolutely unforgivable. Especially to you, Linda, who has been betrayed by him for so long. You mustn't just cry and suffer in silence. You have to fight back. We support you, so go ahead and do your best, his wife added with encouraging words. Having Mark's parents on my side was very comforting. Even if they had opposed me, I was determined to carry out my revenge thoroughly. In the not-so-distant future, Mark would face hell. Betraying me and going after another woman meant just that. Imagining Mark's face filled with despair made my heart race, and I eagerly awaited the day he would wake up. Once he did, he would regret ever regaining consciousness, facing a terrible situation. Thinking about such a future made me so excited I couldn't sleep at night, almost like a child before a field trip. Regarding the compensation for the accident, since Mark was unconscious and couldn't receive it immediately, I decided to leave it with his parents. We also agreed to leave the decision of what to do with it to them. I was sure they would make a good judgment. Soon after, I received a call from the hospital. Mark had regained consciousness. I immediately went to the hospital with his phone. When I was led to his room, Mark was awake. "How are you feeling?" I asked him. Noticing me, Mark, with a cheerful smile, said, "Terrible. I've missed work and I feel awful. But at least I'll get compensation." "Of course, you won't get a penny, right?" He seemed quite well. "By the way, you were on the ferry with a woman, weren't you?" I asked with a smile. But Mark remained silent, not responding. "Weren't you supposed to be traveling alone? Yet, you reserved with a woman. What's your relationship with her? How is she?" "She's fine. I heard she was discharged a few days ago." "That's good," Mark said, looking genuinely relieved. So, Jessica meant that much to him. But his reaction only irritated me more. Even at such a time, he was concerned about his affair partner. If he had that much mental leeway, he could surely recover from being brought to hell. So, anything I do will be okay. Even if I go too far, it will be okay. "Well, I actually know all about your affair. You were cheating, weren't you, Mark? Your phone was returned to me right after the accident, and it had all the data, including the history of your conversations with her. You were head over heels for her, weren't you?" "That is..." "I don't need any excuses, there's plenty of evidence. Besides, I can't trust any excuse you give now. Just admit it and apologize, and I might forgive you somewhat." "What will you do?" I had this naive thought that if he apologized now, maybe I wouldn't be too harsh, and we could perhaps continue as a couple. After all, I still had a little bit of love left for Mark. No matter how cold our relationship had become over the years, my love for Mark had never completely faded. I genuinely cared about him. So, there was a part of me that wanted to give it another shot. If he apologized and showed remorse, I couldn't deny that I was somewhat lenient. However, Mark betrayed my words. He said, "I don't need forgiveness from someone like you. You can't live without me, can you? So, why do I need to apologize at all? Do you think it's okay to defy your husband? Shouldn't you be the one apologizing?" "Oh, I see. That's what you think," I replied. Mark's words made it clear to me that it was hopeless. No matter how much I compromised, it was over. His feelings were not with me anymore. Then, I must make him fully understand the gravity of his betrayal. He needs to realize just how significant his actions were. "Then let's get a divorce. I've already got a lawyer ready, so let's proceed." When I said that, Mark tilted his head and exclaimed, "What? Divorce? Are you serious? If you do that, you'll..." He was probably surprised to hear the word divorce from me. But I had been considering divorce for a while and had no intention of retracting my words.
Yes, I'm serious. Let's get divorced and have no further dealings with each other. I've found a good lawyer. I'm going home for today, so prepare yourself mentally. I'll be seeking alimony for your affair. Alimony? I didn't expect that. I can't stand the thought of giving you money. And I can't afford it. Well, that's too bad. You're the one who cheated, so you should take responsibility for it.
Shocked by the mention of alimony, Mark's attitude changed. And he desperately pleaded, "Please, don't ask for alimony. If you do that, I'll be ruined." I was taken aback by his sudden change in behavior, but my irritation grew due to his clingy attitude.
You did this to yourself, so you need to take responsibility. No matter what you say now, I won't change my mind.
I left the hospital room, ignoring his cries of "wait for me." Afterward, I proceeded with the divorce proceedings. Mark was reluctant to divorce, so I had to involve a lawyer for the negotiations. With undeniable evidence against him, Mark couldn't escape the situation, and the divorce was granted, along with the alimony. Mark later sought help from his parents, but they were furious with his actions. They kept the compensation money and ordered Mark to pay the alimony with his earnings. This forced Mark to work hard as he couldn't afford to spend time with Jessica anymore. Eventually, Jessica lost interest in him, and their relationship ended. The shock of losing Jessica was immense, and Mark ended up quitting his job. He's now living as a part-timer. I met my former father-in-law recently, and he seemed quite down, which was almost amusing to see. As for me, I'm leading a happy life. I received the alimony and used it to move and prepare for a new life. I found a good job and am now working as an office assistant. The whole ordeal with Mark was stressful and difficult. But without Emily's advice, I might have never realized his betrayal. I'm truly grateful to her. There might be challenges ahead, but I'm determined to face them with strength and perseverance.